The Mediterranean sun was setting over the horizon when I tried to call Ethan for the 7th time that week. The USS Eisenhower cut through the waters somewhere between Italy and Greece, and I stood on deck with my phone pressed to my ear, listening to the same automated message I had heard for months. The person you are trying to reach is not available. Please leave a message after the tone. I ended the call without leaving another voicemail. I had left dozens already, each one increasingly desperate, each one met with the same silence. My little brother, the boy I had helped raise, the kid who used to call me every week without fail, had stopped talking to me. And I had no idea why. Today was his 22nd birthday. I had been calling since yesterday, calculating the time difference, trying to catch him at different hours. I had sent texts, emails, even a card through the mail that I had posted from our last port stop. Nothing. Complete radio silence. I leaned against the railing and watched the sun sink below the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The beauty of it felt wrong somehow, discordant with the heaviness in my chest. Something had happened to my relationship with Ethan, something I could not understand or fix from thousands of miles away. It had not always been like this. I thought back to our childhood, to the early years when we were inseparable despite the 5-year age gap between us. I was there when Ethan took his first steps, was the one who taught him to ride a bicycle in our backyard in Charlotte. I helped him with homework, defended him from bullies, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. Ethan was my half-brother, technically, the son of my father Marcus and my stepmother Christine. But that distinction had never mattered to me. From the moment he was born, he was just my brother. My responsibility. My family. I remembered the day he was born, how I had held him in the hospital with careful 5-year-old arms, how I had promised him silently that I would always protect him. That promise had guided my whole childhood. When Christine was cold to me, which was often, Ethan was my comfort. When I felt like an outsider in my own home, Ethan made me feel like I belonged. Things started to change when I joined the Navy. I was 22, the same age Ethan was now, eager to serve my country and build a career that would make my father proud. The decision had felt right at the time, a continuation of the family tradition that my grandfather had started. But it had also taken me away from home, away from the daily connection with Ethan that had sustained me through difficult years. At first, we adapted. Ethan and I called each other every week, sometimes more. He told me about college, about his classes and friends and the girl he was dating. I told him about boot camp, about training, about life on a ship. The distance was hard, but our bond seemed strong enough to survive it. Then, gradually, something shifted. The weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly, then sporadic. Ethan's messages became shorter, his tone more distant. When I asked what was wrong, he deflected. When I tried to video chat, he was always busy. The last real conversation we had was 8 months ago, during my brief leave before this deployment. I had gone home to Charlotte, excited to see my family, expecting Ethan to greet me the way he always had. Instead, I found a stranger wearing my brother's face. "Why are you even here?" he had asked, his voice cold. "Don't you have more important things to do? Military stuff?" Dad can't stop talking about how proud he is of his Navy daughter. "Ethan, what are you talking about? I came home to see you." "To see the whole family?" "Right, the family." He had laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the family where you're the star and I'm the disappointment? The family where Dad keeps your commissioning photo on his desk but barely remembers I exist?" I had been stunned. None of what he was saying matched reality as I knew it. Our father loved us both, had always been supportive of both his children. I had never seen any favoritism, any indication that Marcus valued one child over the other. "That's not true," I had said. "Dad loves you. He's proud of you. He tells me all the time about your grades, your internship." "Stop." Ethan had held up his hand. "Just stop. You don't get it. You'll never get it. You're the daughter of his first wife, the love of his life. I'm just the kid he had with his backup plan." The words had cut deep, not just because they were cruel, but because they sounded rehearsed, as if Ethan had been practicing them, building them up in his mind until they became his truth. We had not spoken since. I had tried, repeatedly, But Ethan had blocked my calls, ignored my texts, returned my letters unopened. My attempts to reach out through our father had been met with vague assurances that Ethan was going through something and would come around eventually. But he had not come around. And now, standing on the deck of a warship in the middle of the Mediterranean, I was forced to accept that I had lost my brother. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. For a wild moment, I hoped it was Ethan, finally reaching out, finally ready to talk. But the caller ID showed my father's number. Dad? Jade. His voice was strained, tight with something that sounded like fear. I need you to stay calm. My blood turned to ice. What happened? I had a heart attack this morning. I'm in the hospital. The doctors say I'll be okay, but they want to keep me for observation, maybe do a procedure. I'm coming home. The words were out before I could think. I'll request emergency leave. I can be there in 2 days, maybe less. Jade, honey, you don't have to. I'm coming. I was already moving, walking toward the operations center where I could start the paperwork. I'll call you when I have my flight information. I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby. I'll see you soon. I ended the call and broke into a run, my mind racing with fear and calculations. My father was in the hospital. He needed me. Whatever was happening with Ethan, whatever silence had grown between us, it would have to wait. Or maybe it would not wait. Maybe this crisis would be the thing that brought us back together, that forced us to confront whatever had gone wrong. Maybe, in the face of almost losing our father, Ethan would remember that we were family. I hoped so, because I was not ready to lose both of them. The emergency leave was approved within hours, the Navy machinery moving with impressive efficiency when family crisis demanded it. By the time the sun rose over the Mediterranean the next morning, I was on a transport to a NATO base, connecting to a commercial flight that would take me home. I spent the journey staring out the window, watching the clouds pass beneath us, thinking about my family, about my father, who had raised me alone for 4 years after my mother died giving birth to me, about Christine, who had entered our lives when I was 4 and had always kept me at arm's length, about Ethan, the unexpected gift of a little brother who had made our complicated family feel whole. I thought about my mother, too, the woman I had never known except through photographs and stories. Nicole Williams, my father's first wife, the love of his life according to everyone who had known them. She had died of a hemorrhage shortly after I was born, leaving my father shattered and me motherless before I had drawn my first real breath. My father had kept her memory alive throughout my childhood, showing me pictures, telling me stories, making sure I knew the woman who had given her life to bring me into the world. I had grown up feeling connected to her, grateful for her sacrifice, proud to look so much like her that relatives sometimes did a double take when they saw me. Christine had never seemed comfortable with that connection. She was polite about my mother, never said anything negative, but there was always a tension when Nicole was mentioned, as if every reference to the first wife was a reminder that Christine was the second, the replacement, the woman Marcus had married out of loneliness rather than the passionate love he had felt for Nicole. I had sensed that tension as a child without fully understanding it. Now, as an adult, I wondered if it had shaped more than I realized. The plane began its descent into Charlotte, and I pressed my face to the window, watching my hometown appear below. Somewhere down there, my father was in a hospital bed. Somewhere down there, my brother was nursing a resentment I did not understand. I was coming home to face all of it. I just hoped I was ready. The hospital was the same one where I had been born, where my mother had died bringing me into the world. Walking through its corridors felt like walking through layers of family history, some of it painful, all of it significant. I had come here for checkups as a child, for Ethan's birth when I was 5, for my grandfather's final days a decade ago. Now I was here for my father, and the familiar walls felt different, threatening. I found the cardiac unit on the 4th floor and stopped at the nursing station to ask about Marcus Mitchell. The nurse directed me to a room at the end of the hall, mentioning that family members were already there. Family members. Plural. I walked down the corridor, my heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety about my father's health and apprehension about seeing Ethan. Would he talk to me? Would he pretend I was not there? Would the crisis break through the wall he had built between us? The door to my father's room was partially open. I could hear voices inside, low and conversational. I recognized Christine's measured tones, and then, unmistakably, Ethan's voice. The sound of it after so many months of silence hit me harder than I expected, bringing tears to my eyes. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. My father was propped up in the hospital bed, looking pale but alert. Monitors beeped steadily around him, IV lines running into his arm. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the medical equipment, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Jade." He reached out his hand, and I crossed the room to take it. "You came." "Of course I came." I leaned down to kiss his forehead, careful of the wires. "How are you feeling?" "Like my heart tried to kill me, but didn't quite succeed." He smiled weakly. "The doctors say I'll live. Probably need surgery, but not emergency." "I'll be okay." "You'd better be." I squeezed his hand, trying to communicate through touch all the fear I had felt during the journey home. Then I turned to face the others. Christine stood near the window, her arms crossed, watching me with an expression I could not read. At 52, she was still attractive, her blonde hair carefully maintained, her figure trim from years of yoga and careful eating. She had been a nurse when she met my father, caring for him during a hospital stay for pneumonia. Their romance had seemed unlikely at the time, the grieving black widower and the white healthcare worker, but they had built a life together. Or so I had always thought. "Jade." Christine's greeting was cool but civil. "I'm glad you could make it. Your father has been asking for you. I came as soon as I heard." I kept my voice neutral, not wanting to start conflict. "Thank you for being here with him." Then I looked at Ethan. My little brother sat in a chair by the window, as far from the bed as he could get while still technically being in the room. He had grown since I last saw him, filled out through the shoulders, his face losing the last softness of adolescence. He looked like Christine mostly, with her fair coloring and blue eyes, but there was something of our father in the shape of his jaw, the set of his shoulders. He was looking at me the way you might look at a stranger. No warmth, no recognition, just cool assessment. "Hello, Ethan." I kept my voice gentle. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" He did not stand, did not move toward me. "I'm surprised you bothered to come. Don't you have ships to run? Countries to save?" "My father had a heart attack. There's nowhere else I would be." "Right." Ethan's lip curled slightly. "The devoted daughter rushes home. Dad must be thrilled." "Ethan." Our father's voice was weak but firm. "That's enough." "Is it, Dad? Is it ever enough?" Ethan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "She shows up after months of being gone, and suddenly everything is about Jade again. Jade is here. Jade came all the way from the Mediterranean. Jade is such a good daughter." I stared at him, shocked by the venom in his voice. "Ethan, I don't understand." "Of course you don't. You never do." He pushed past me toward the door. "I'll be in the cafeteria. Let me know when the Jade show is over." He was gone before I could respond, the door swinging shut behind him. I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. "I'm sorry about that." Christine's voice was smooth, sympathetic. "He's been under a lot of stress with your father's condition, and," she paused delicately, "things have been difficult for him lately." "What things? What's going on with him?" Christine exchanged a glance with my father that I could not interpret. "Perhaps we should let your father rest. We can talk about Ethan later." But I was not ready to drop it. He's been ignoring me for almost a year. He said horrible things to me the last time I saw him. And just now, I gestured toward the door. "What is happening? What did I do?" "Maybe it's not about what you did." Christine moved toward the door. "Maybe it's about what you are. Jade, you've always been special. The military hero, following in family footsteps, making everyone proud. Ethan has had to live in that shadow his whole life. Perhaps he finally got tired of it." She left before I could respond, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. I turned to my father, who was watching me with troubled eyes. "Dad, what is she talking about? What's happening with Ethan?" My father sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. "I don't know, baby. I really don't know. He's changed over the last few years, become distant, angry. He says things sometimes that don't sound like him." He paused. "Christine says it's normal, that he's just finding himself. but it doesn't feel normal to me. I sat down in the chair Ethan had vacated, my mind racing. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a long time. And I was only just beginning to realize how deep the problem went. The days that followed were a study in awkwardness and tension. My father's condition stabilized. The doctors scheduled a cardiac catheterization for later in the week, and I settled into an uncomfortable routine of hospital visits and hotel nights. Christine had made it clear that the family home was not available to me, citing the need to keep things calm for Ethan during this stressful time. The implication was clear. My presence was a source of stress. My being there made things worse. I tried to accept it without resentment, telling myself that whatever was happening with Ethan was more important than my comfort. But it was hard. The house in Charlotte was where I had grown up, where my childhood bedroom still held my old books and posters, where I had always been welcome. Being told to stay in a hotel felt like another form of rejection, another sign that I no longer belonged in my own family. Ethan avoided me when possible, speaking to me only when our father was present, and even then in monosyllables. I watched him move around the hospital room, attentive to our father's needs, solicitous of Christine's comfort, and I could not reconcile this caring young man with the hostile stranger who had told me the Jade show needed to end. On the third day, I found myself alone with Ethan in the hospital cafeteria. Christine had gone to handle some insurance paperwork. Our father was being examined by his cardiologist, and the two of us sat at separate tables, pretending the other did not exist. I could not stand it any longer. Ethan. I picked up my coffee and walked to his table. Can we talk? He looked up from his phone with an expression of weary resignation. Do we have to? I think we do. I sat down across from him without waiting for invitation. Something is wrong between us, and I don't understand what it is. We used to be close. We used to talk about everything. What happened? Ethan set down his phone and studied me with eyes that held no warmth. You happened, Jade. You and your perfect career and your perfect life and the perfect way Dad looks at you like you're the only thing that matters. That's not true. Dad loves both of us. Does he? Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping. Then why is your commissioning photo on his desk and not my college graduation? Why does he spend hours looking at pictures of you in uniform and barely notice when I'm in the room? Why did he cry when you got deployed but barely blink when I told him I got into grad school? I stared at him, genuinely bewildered. Ethan, I don't see our father that way. He's always talked about you with pride, told me about your achievements. See, that's the thing. Ethan sat back, his arms crossed. You don't see it because you're not here. You've been gone for 5 years, Jade. You show up a couple times a year, play the returning hero, soak up all the attention, and then you leave again. You have no idea what it's like to be in this house every day, watching Dad compare me to you and find me lacking. He doesn't do that. He does. Maybe not out loud, not in words. But I see it in his eyes. I hear it in the way he talks about you. Jade did this amazing thing. Jade is serving her country. Jade is just like her mother. Ethan's voice cracked on the last word. Just like her mother. The woman he actually loved. The woman he still loves, even though she's been dead for 27 years. I felt like I had been punched. Ethan, my mother died. That doesn't mean your mother was the love of his life. Everyone knows it. Dad knows it. Mom knows it. He caught himself, seeming to realize he had said something significant. Christine, I mean. My mom. But I had heard it. Mom knows it. Christine knows it. What has Christine been telling you? I asked quietly. Nothing that isn't true. But Ethan looked away, unable to meet my eyes. She explained things I was too blind to see before. What things? That I'll never be enough for Dad. That no matter what I do, I can't compete with you and your dead mother and the perfect family he had before we came along. Ethan's voice was bitter. Christine and I are just the consolation prize, Jade. The family he settled for because the one he really wanted was taken from him. I sat in stunned silence, processing what I was hearing. This was not Ethan talking. Not really. These were ideas that had been planted in his mind, carefully cultivated over time, shaped into a narrative that cast our father as a man who had never truly accepted his second family. And the source was obvious. Did Christine tell you that? I asked. That you and she are a consolation prize? She didn't have to tell me. I figured it out myself. But there was something uncertain in his voice, a flicker of doubt beneath the certainty. Ethan, listen to me. Dad loves you. He has always loved you. Whatever you think you see, whatever you think you understand about our family, it's not true. How would you know? You're never here. He stood abruptly, grabbing his phone. You left, Jade. You joined the Navy and you left. And I've been here watching this family fall apart for 5 years. Don't come back now and tell me I don't understand what's happening in my own house. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me alone with my cold coffee and a growing certainty that something was very, very wrong. Christine had done this. I did not know how or why, but I was certain of it. She had spent years poisoning Ethan's mind against our father, against me, shaping his perception of reality until he saw enemies and rivals everywhere. The question was, why? I needed to find out. I needed to understand what had happened while I was away. And I needed evidence, something concrete that would break through the walls Ethan had built and show him the truth. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. Old neighbors, family friends, anyone who had been around during the years I was deployed. If Christine had been systematically manipulating my brother, someone must have noticed. Someone must have seen something. It was time to start investigating. The first person I reached was Mrs. Henderson, who had lived next door to us since before I was born. She was 80 now, sharp-minded despite her age, with a memory that stretched back decades. Jade Mitchell, I heard you were back in town. How's your father doing? He's stable, thank you. He's having a procedure tomorrow, but the doctors are optimistic. I hesitated, then pushed forward. Mrs. Henderson, I need to ask you something. About my family, about Christine and Ethan. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Mrs. Henderson spoke again, her voice was careful. What do you want to know? Have you noticed anything strange about how Christine talks about me or my father? Another pause, longer this time. I don't like to gossip, Jade, especially about neighbors. This isn't gossip. I'm trying to understand what's happened to my brother. He barely speaks to me anymore, and when he does, he says things that don't make sense. He thinks our father doesn't love him. He thinks I'm some kind of rival. Mrs. Henderson sighed. I was hoping someone would finally notice. Notice what? Honey, Christine has been talking about you for years. Not to your face, of course, but to the neighbors, to the ladies at church, to anyone who would listen. She paints a picture of you as this demanding princess who takes all your father's attention. She says you look down on her and Ethan, that you think you're better than them because you're military, because you're the daughter of the sainted first wife. I felt sick. That's not true. I know it's not true. Anyone who's ever met you knows it's not true. But Christine is convincing, and she's been at it for a long time. Mrs. Henderson paused. And Ethan has heard all of it. Every nasty comment, every subtle dig. He's been marinating in it for years. Why didn't anyone say something? What were we going to say? Your stepmother is poisoning your brother's mind? It sounds crazy. And Christine is so careful, so plausible, she never says anything outright cruel. It's all implications, suggestions, shared sighs about how difficult things are when you're the second wife. I thanked Mrs. Henderson and ended the call, my mind reeling. Christine had been building this narrative for years, constructing a version of reality where she and Ethan were victims, and I was the villain. And Ethan, young and impressionable, had absorbed it all without question. But why? What did Christine have to gain from turning her son against me? The answer came to me slowly, pieces of a puzzle I had never thought to assemble. Christine had always been jealous of my mother. She had married a man who was still in love with his dead first wife, had lived in a house filled with photographs of another woman, had raised a stepdaughter who was the living image of that woman. She could not compete with a ghost. So instead, she had decided to destroy the ghost's legacy. She could not erase my mother from my father's heart, but she could erase my mother's daughter from her family's affection. She could turn Ethan against me, isolate me, make me the enemy. She could prove that she was the real family, the one that mattered, the one that deserved loyalty. It was twisted. It was cruel, and it had been happening right under my nose for years. I had to find proof, something concrete that would show Ethan the truth. And I had a feeling I knew where to start looking. The next morning, while Christine was at the hospital with my father for his procedure, I returned to the family home. Ethan had classes at the university, and I had arranged to be alone in the house for at least a few hours. I needed to search without interference. The house looked the same as I remembered, a comfortable colonial in a quiet neighborhood, the lawn carefully maintained, the flower beds blooming with Christine's roses. But walking through the front door, I noticed things I had missed before. My mother's photographs, once prominently displayed in the living room, were now relegated to a single corner shelf. My high school graduation portrait had been moved to a hallway. The commissioning photo that Ethan had complained about was nowhere to be seen. Christine had been busy, slowly erasing me from the visible history of this house, just as she had been slowly erasing me from my brother's heart. I went straight to my father's study, a small room at the back of the house where he had always retreated to work on projects or read. It was the one space that had always been exclusively his, the one room Christine rarely entered. The study looked untouched, my father's books still lining the shelves, his old desk covered with papers and photographs. I saw pictures of me here, including the commissioning photo that was apparently too offensive for Ethan to bear. I saw pictures of Ethan, too, his high school graduation and college acceptance letter and other milestones. Our father had been keeping track of both his children, celebrating both of our achievements. So why did Ethan believe he was forgotten? I searched through the desk drawers, looking for anything that might explain what had happened. Old letters, cards, documents that might shed light on the family dynamics. What I found was mundane at first. Tax records, insurance policies, maintenance receipts. Then I found a locked drawer. The lock was simple, the kind that could be opened with a paperclip if you knew what you were doing. I had learned to pick locks as a teenager, a skill my father had taught me during a phase when I was fascinated by spy movies. I found a paperclip in the desk organizer and went to work. The drawer opened with a soft click. Inside were letters, dozens of them, neatly stacked, some in envelopes and some loose. I picked up the first one and recognized my father's handwriting immediately. It was addressed to Ethan. The date at the top was from 2 years ago, around the time things had started getting really bad between Ethan and me. I hesitated, feeling the weight of privacy, the knowledge that this letter was not meant for my eyes. But I needed to understand. I needed to know what my father had been trying to say. I read the letter. Dear Ethan, I've been trying to find a way to say this to you in person, but every time I start, the words seem to disappear. So I'm writing them down, hoping that reading them might be easier than hearing them. I love you. I have loved you since the moment you were born, and I will love you until my last breath. You are my son, my blood, my heart. Nothing about that will ever change. I know things have been difficult lately. I know you've been struggling with something, though you won't tell me what. I see the distance in your eyes, the way you pull away when I try to get close. I don't know what I did to cause this, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for whatever it was. You mentioned the other day that you tried to join the army and were rejected because of your heart condition. Ethan, that rejection does not diminish you in any way. Your heart is strong in all the ways that matter. Your courage, your compassion, your determination, those are the things that make a man, not a uniform. I know you think I'm prouder of Jade because she's in the Navy. That's not true. I'm proud of both my children, for different reasons. Jade chose a path that I can relate to because of my own father's military service. But you have chosen paths that are entirely your own, paths that take just as much courage in different ways. When I talk about Jade, it's not because I love her more. It's because she's far away, and talking about her is how I keep her close. When you're not around, I talk about you the same way. You've just never heard it because you're usually here. I worry about your mother sometimes. Christine has been different lately, distant and cold. She makes comments about my first marriage, about Nicole, that concern me. I wonder if she's feeling insecure, if there's something I should be doing differently. But when I try to talk to her about it, she changes the subject or leaves the room. I'm writing this letter because I need you to know in case something happens, in case we never get to have this conversation in person. You are not second best. You have never been second best. You are my son, and I love you with all my heart. Please come talk to me, Ethan. Please let me in. Your father, Marcus. The letter was still sealed. It had never been read. I stared at it, my hands trembling. My father had written this letter 2 years ago, trying to reach his son, trying to bridge the gap that had opened between them. And somehow, the letter had never arrived. I looked at the drawer full of other papers and found more letters, more attempts at communication. Some were drafts, never finished. Some were complete but never sent. And some, like this one, were finished, sealed, addressed to Ethan, but still here in my father's locked drawer. How had they ended up here? Why hadn't they been mailed? Then I found another piece of paper tucked beneath the letters. A note in Christine's handwriting. Found this in the outgoing mail. Added to the collection? He keeps trying, doesn't he? Too bad Ethan will never see any of them. The note was dated, marking when Christine had intercepted this particular letter. There were similar notes attached to other letters, a record of systematic sabotage stretching back years. Christine had been intercepting my father's letters to Ethan. She had been stealing his attempts to connect with his son, hiding them away, making sure that Ethan never knew his father was reaching out. And she had been keeping them as trophies. Evidence of her campaign to destroy their relationship. My hands were shaking with rage as I gathered the letters together. This was proof. This was undeniable proof that Christine had been manipulating the family for years, separating father and son, poisoning Ethan's mind with lies while preventing the truth from ever reaching him. I needed to show this to Ethan. I needed him to see what his mother had done. I took the letter my father had written and the note in Christine's handwriting, leaving the rest for now. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a record that could not be hidden or destroyed. Then I heard the front door open. Jade? It was Ethan's voice. Are you in here? I stepped out of the study, the letter clutched in my hand. Ethan stood in the entryway, his expression suspicious. What are you doing in Dad's study? I was looking for something. I held up the letter, and I found it. What is that? I walked toward him, my heart pounding. It's a letter Dad wrote to you 2 years ago. A letter you never received because your mother intercepted it and hid it in his desk. Ethan's face went pale. That's ridiculous. Mom would never. She did. I handed him the letter. Read it, and then read this. I showed him Christine's note, the triumphant record of her sabotage. Ethan's hands were shaking as he took the papers. I watched his eyes move across the pages, watched his expression shift from skepticism to confusion to dawning horror. This is Dad's handwriting, he said. I know his handwriting. Read what he wrote. Read what he's been trying to tell you for years. Ethan read the letter in silence. When he finished, there were tears streaming down his face. He loves me, he whispered. He's always loved me. Yes, he has. And your mother has been making sure you never knew it. Ethan looked at Christine's note, at the damning evidence of her betrayal. Why would she do this? Because she's jealous. Of my mother, of me, of anyone who takes my father's attention away from her. I reached out and touched my brother's arm. She's been lying to you, Ethan. About Dad, about me, about everything. Ethan sank onto the nearest chair, the letter still clutched in his hands. He looked shattered, everything he believed crumbling around him. What do we do now? Now, I said, we go talk to Dad, and then we talk to Christine. My father was back in his hospital room when Ethan and I arrived, Christine sitting beside his bed reading a magazine. The procedure had gone well, the doctor said, and he would need a few more days of observation before being released. He looked tired but alert, his eyes brightening when he saw both his children walk in together. Jade, Ethan. He reached out his hands, one for each of us. This is a nice surprise. I took his hand, but my eyes were on Christine. She had looked up from her magazine with an expression of polite curiosity that barely concealed something sharper beneath. She knew something was different. She could sense the change in atmosphere. Dad, we need to talk to you about something. I kept my voice calm, though my heart was racing. About some letters we found in your study. My father's expression shifted to confusion. Letters? What letters? Ethan stepped forward, holding the letter he had been reading for the past hour. This letter, Dad. The one you wrote to me 2 years ago. My father's face went pale. He reached for the letter with a trembling hand, recognition dawning in his eyes. I wrote this. I was going to give it to you, but it disappeared from my desk. I thought I had misplaced it. You didn't misplace it. I looked directly at Christine. It was taken from your outgoing mail and hidden in a locked drawer, along with dozens of other letters you've written to Ethan over the years. Christine's expression froze. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw the calculation beneath. Then it was back, her face arranging itself into wounded confusion. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. Are you accusing me of something, Jade? I'm not accusing. I'm stating facts. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photographs I had taken. These are your notes, Christine, in your handwriting, recording each time you intercepted a letter from Dad to Ethan. The room was silent. My father stared at the photographs on my phone, his face cycling through confusion, realization, and finally a deep, burning anger. Christine. His voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. Is this true? Of course not. Jade is making this up to turn you against me. She's always been jealous of what we have. Don't! My father's voice cut through her protestations. I recognize your handwriting, Christine. I've been looking at it for 25 years. Don't stand there and lie to my face. Christine's composure cracked. Marcus, you don't understand. I was protecting Ethan. Those letters were full of comparisons to Jade, of talk about your first wife. They would have hurt him. They would have told him I loved him. My father's voice rose. Then he caught himself, remembering the heart monitor beeping beside him. For years, I've been watching my son pull away from me. I've been trying to understand what I did wrong. And all this time, it was you? Ethan stepped forward, his voice shaking. You told me Dad didn't care about me. You said he only loved Jade, that I was a disappointment to him. You said... He choked on the words. You said so many things. Christine's expression hardened. The wounded innocence disappeared, replaced by something colder, more honest. I said what was true. Marcus has been in love with a dead woman for 27 years. Nicole this, Nicole that. Do you know what it's like to live with a ghost? To know that no matter what you do, you can never compete with someone's memory of their perfect first love? So you took it out on my children? My father's voice was incredulous. You poisoned my son against me because you were jealous of my first wife? Jade is Nicole's daughter. Every time I look at her, I see the woman you actually loved. The woman you still love. Christine's voice rose, years of resentment pouring out. You keep her picture by your bed. You talk about her to anyone who will listen. You named our son after her father, for God's sake. Because I wanted to honor her memory. Because she was the mother of my first child. That doesn't mean I love you or Ethan any less. Doesn't it? Christine laughed bitterly. Then why does Jade get all the attention? Why is her commissioning photo on your desk while Ethan's graduation is in the hallway? Why do you... Because Jade is far away! My father was shouting now, his heart monitor beeping faster. Because I miss her every day, and seeing her photo helps me feel connected to her. When Ethan was at college, I kept his photo on my desk. When Jade is here, I look at photos of Ethan. That's what parents do, Christine. We focus on the child who isn't present because we're trying to hold on to them. A nurse appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. Everything okay in here? We're fine. I forced a smile. Just a family discussion. We'll keep it down. The nurse gave us a warning look and withdrew. I turned back to Christine, who was standing rigidly by the window, her arms crossed, her expression defiant. You need to leave, I said quietly. Now. This is my husband, my family. You can't order me out? I'm not ordering you. I'm telling you that if you stay, this is going to get worse. Dad needs to rest, and he can't rest with you here. I looked at my father, who was breathing heavily, his face flushed with emotion. Please, Christine, for his health, if nothing else. Leave. Christine gathered her purse with sharp, angry movements. At the door, she turned back to look at Ethan. Everything I did was for you, she said. To protect you. To make sure you knew that someone in this family loved you first. By lying to me? Ethan's voice broke. By making me hate my own sister? By telling me my father didn't care about me? I never said he didn't care. You said it every day. Maybe not in those words, but in every sigh, every comparison, every time you pointed out what Dad did for Jade versus what he did for me. Ethan shook his head. I believed you, Mom. I believed every word. And it was all lies. Christine stared at her son for a long moment. Then, without another word, she walked out of the room. The door closed behind her, and the three of us sat in the aftermath of the explosion. My father was crying silently, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry, he said. To both of you. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you. Ethan crossed to his father's bedside and took his hand. It's not your fault, Dad. She fooled all of us. She fooled me too, I said, sitting on the other side of the bed. I never understood why Ethan was so angry at me. I thought I had done something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Ethan looked at me with eyes that were finally clear. I'm so sorry, Jade. The things I said to you, the way I treated you, I was so convinced that you were my enemy, that you were taking Dad away from me. You were told that every day. Anyone would believe it eventually. But I should have questioned it. I should have asked Dad directly instead of just accepting what Mom said. Ethan shook his head. I wasted years hating you. Years I can never get back. I reached across the bed and took my brother's hand. We're not going to get those years back, but we can start over from here. My father placed his hands over both of ours, connecting the three of us. That's all I've ever wanted. My children, together, loving each other the way you did when you were small. He looked between us, his eyes wet. I love you both, equally, completely. And nothing Christine said or did can ever change that. We sat there together as the sun set outside the hospital window, three pieces of a family that had been scattered by lies, finally coming back together. It would take time to heal. Years of manipulation could not be undone in a single afternoon. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. My brother was back. My father knew the truth. And Christine's reign of deception was finally over. The weeks that followed were a process of reconstruction, piece by piece, conversation by conversation. My father recovered from his procedure and was released from the hospital, but he did not return to the house he had shared with Christine. Instead, he moved into a short-term rental, needing space to process what had happened, to decide what he wanted his future to look like. Ethan moved in with him, unwilling to stay in the house with his mother, unable to look at her without seeing the years of manipulation she had orchestrated. He was still struggling with the revelation, caught between his love for Christine and his anger at what she had done. She was still his mother. That did not change just because he had learned the truth. But his relationship with her would never be the same. How could it be? She had systematically destroyed his connection with his father and sister, had made him believe he was unloved when he was deeply cherished, had weaponized his insecurities against the people who cared about him most. I extended my leave as long as I could, staying in Charlotte to help my family navigate this transition. My father and I had long conversations about my mother, about his first marriage, about the guilt he still carried for finding happiness again after Nicole's death. He had never stopped loving her, he admitted, but that didn't mean he loved Christine less. Hearts were not zero-sum games. I failed her too, he said one evening, sitting on the balcony of his rental apartment. Christine, she told me for years that she felt like second best, and I dismissed it. I told her she was being silly, that I loved her completely, but I never really heard what she was saying. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, nothing excuses what she did. But I wonder sometimes if things would have been different if I had listened better, if I had made her feel more secure. She chose to hurt your children instead of talking to you about her feelings. That was her choice, Dad. You can't take responsibility for that. He nodded, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. My father was a man who took responsibility for everything, who believed he should be able to fix every problem, heal every wound. Learning that his wife had been sabotaging his family for years was a wound he did not know how to heal. Ethan and I spent hours together during those weeks, rebuilding the relationship that Christine had worked so hard to destroy. We talked about our childhood, about the good times we remembered before the distance grew. We talked about the years of estrangement, about the things he had believed and the anger he had carried. And we talked about the future, about how we would move forward as siblings despite everything that had happened. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said repeatedly. "I should have known better. I should have questioned what Mom was saying." "You were a kid when she started. What were you supposed to do? Demand proof?" I shook my head. "She was your mother. You trusted her. That's normal. But I said such horrible things to you. The last time you came home, I told you. I remember what you said, and it hurt. But Ethan, you were repeating what you had been taught. You're not a bad person. You were just misled." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we can really get past this? All those years?" "I think we can try." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "We're family, Ethan. Real family. And family fights for each other." Christine reached out to Ethan several times during those weeks, wanting to explain, wanting to defend herself. Ethan eventually agreed to meet her, needing some kind of closure even if reconciliation was not possible. I was not present for that conversation, but Ethan told me about it afterward. Christine had tried to justify her actions, to explain that she was protecting him from the pain of feeling second best. She claimed she had never meant for things to go so far, that she had just been venting her frustrations, and Ethan had taken it more seriously than she intended. Ethan had not believed her. He had seen the notes, the records of her interceptions, the clear evidence of deliberate sabotage. This was not accidental. This was not a mother trying to protect her son. This was a woman waging a quiet war against her stepdaughter and using her own son as a weapon. "I told her I needed time," Ethan said. "I can't just forgive her. Maybe I'll never be able to forgive her. But I'm not ready to cut her off completely. She's still my mother." "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to decide everything right now. Just take it day by day." He nodded, looking exhausted but also somehow lighter. The truth, painful as it was, had set something free in him. He was no longer carrying the weight of believing he was unloved. 6 months after the confrontation in the hospital, I returned to Charlotte for Ethan's graduate school graduation. It was a milestone I would not have missed for anything, a chance to celebrate my brother and to mark how far our family had come. The ceremony was held on a sunny May afternoon, the university quad filled with proud families and nervous graduates. I sat beside my father in the front row of the audience section, both of us craning our necks to spot Ethan among the sea of caps and gowns. "There he is," my father said, pointing to a row near the front. "Third from the left." I followed his gesture and found my brother, looking handsome and nervous and proud all at once. He caught my eye and grinned, the same grin he had given me as a child when I praised his achievements. For a moment, I saw the little boy I had taught to ride a bicycle, the teenager I had comforted through his first heartbreak, the young man I had almost lost to his mother's lies. We were still healing. The wounds Christine had inflicted were deep, and they would take years to fully close. But we were healing together, which was what mattered. Ethan's name was called, and he walked across the stage to receive his diploma. My father and I cheered loudly enough to embarrass him, which was exactly our intention. He shot us a look of mock annoyance, but he was smiling. Afterward, we gathered in the plaza for photographs and celebration. Ethan posed with his diploma, with his father, with me. We took a group shot, the three of us with our arms around each other, a family portrait that had seemed impossible a year ago. "I wish Mom could have been here," Ethan said quietly, looking at the photograph on my father's phone. Not the way she was, but the way she should have been. A mother who was happy for me without any agenda. "Maybe someday," I said. "People can change." Maybe. But Ethan did not sound hopeful. Christine and my father were in the process of divorcing, a legal untangling that was proceeding slowly but inevitably. She had initially contested the separation, claiming that she had done nothing wrong, that the family was overreacting to normal marital tensions. But the evidence of her sabotage was undeniable, and eventually she had agreed to mediation. Ethan maintained limited contact with her, unwilling to completely sever the bond, but unable to return to the relationship they once had. He was in therapy, working through the complicated emotions of having a mother who loved him and betrayed him simultaneously. It was not easy, but he was making progress. "I've been thinking," my father said during dinner that evening, "about making some changes to the house. Now that it's going to be just mine again? What kind of changes? I want to put more pictures up of all of us. Nicole and Jade, Christine and Ethan, everyone together. He paused. I hid your mother's photographs to make Christine comfortable. I thought I was being respectful of my second wife. But all I did was erase your mother from our daily life. That wasn't fair to you, Jade. I never blamed you for that, I said. I understood why you did it. But it was wrong. Nicole was my wife. You are her daughter. You both deserve to be remembered openly, not hidden away like something shameful. He reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm putting Nicole's wedding portrait back in the living room. And I'm putting up more pictures of you. From your commissioning. From your promotions. I'm proud of you, and I'm not going to hide that anymore. Ethan nodded. And I'll make sure to add some of my stuff too, so it's balanced. It doesn't have to be balanced, I said. That's the point, right? It's not a competition. It's just a record of the people we love. My father smiled, his eyes wet. That's exactly right. After dinner, Ethan and I walked through our old neighborhood, past the houses where we had grown up, past the park where I had taught him to throw a football, past all the landmarks of our shared childhood. Thank you, Ethan said suddenly, for not giving up on me, for coming home when Dad got sick, for finding that letter. You're my brother. I was never going to give up on you, but I gave up on you. For years I believed the worst about you, and I never even asked if it was true. He stopped walking and turned to face me. I don't deserve— Stop. I put my hand on his shoulder. We're not keeping score of who deserves what. That's what Christine did, and look where it got us. We're family. We make mistakes. We forgive each other. We move on. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled me into a hug, the kind of embrace we had not shared in years. I missed you, he said. All those years I was angry. Underneath it, I missed my sister. I missed you too. I held him tight. But we're here now. That's what matters. We walked back to the house together, two siblings reunited after years of imposed estrangement. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still difficult conversations to have, still wounds to heal, still relationships to rebuild. But we would face it together, the way we should have been able to all along. Christine had tried to break us apart. She had used lies and manipulation and years of patient poison, and for a while she had succeeded. But in the end, one letter had undone all her work. One letter, hidden in a drawer, never delivered, had revealed the truth about our father's love. And the truth had set us free. My father eventually moved back into the family home, but it was different now. The walls were covered with photographs of everyone he loved, past and present. Nicole's portrait hung in the living room, a testament to the wife he had lost and the daughter he had raised. Ethan's achievements filled another wall, tracking his journey from baby pictures to graduate school. And my military career was represented too, commissioning photos and promotion pictures and candid shots from ports around the world. It was messy and imperfect and beautiful. Just like our family. Ethan and I stayed close despite the distance of my deployments. We talked every week, sometimes more, making up for the years we had lost. He told me about his new job, about the woman he was dating, about his ongoing therapy and how it was helping him understand what he had been through. I told him about life at sea, about my promotions and challenges, about the family I had found in my fellow sailors. We shared our lives the way we always should have, openly and honestly, without a manipulative parent filtering our communications. Christine eventually moved out of state, unable to face the community that had learned about what she had done. Ethan heard from her occasionally, stilted conversations that never quite addressed the elephant in the room. Their relationship might never fully heal, but he was learning to accept that. Some wounds were too deep, some betrayals too profound. All you could do was survive them and keep moving forward. On the anniversary of my father's heart attack, the three of us gathered at his house for a quiet dinner. We raised our glasses to second chances, to truth, to the family we had almost lost and fought to keep. To us, my father said, to honesty, to never letting anyone come between us again. To us, Ethan and I echoed, and I thought of the letter that had changed everything. One piece of paper, intercepted by a jealous woman, hidden for years, finally found. It had revealed my father's love for both his children, had exposed Christine's campaign of manipulation, had given Ethan the proof he needed to question everything he believed. My stepmother had made my brother hate me while I was at sea. She had poisoned his mind with lies and resentment. She had nearly succeeded in destroying our family. But she had made one mistake. She had kept the evidence of her betrayal, and my brother had found it. One letter. That was all it took. And now we were whole again. 2 years after the truth came out, I stood as maid of honor at Ethan's wedding. The ceremony was held in our father's backyard, beneath the oak tree where we had played as children. The same tree where I had pushed Ethan on a tire swing when he was 5, where we had built forts and told secrets and dreamed about our futures. The bride was a woman named Alexis, a social worker Ethan had met through his job. She knew our family's complicated history, knew about Christine's manipulation and the years of estrangement. She had loved Ethan through his therapy and healing, had supported his efforts to rebuild his relationship with our father and me. "Your brother is a good man," she told me the night before the wedding. "Whatever his mother did to him, it didn't break him. He came out stronger." "He's resilient," I agreed. "Always has been. He talks about you constantly, you know. His big sister in the Navy. He's so proud of you." I felt tears prick at my eyes. After everything we had been through, after the years of manufactured hatred, to hear that my brother was proud of me meant more than I could express. The wedding was beautiful. Ethan cried when he saw Alexis walking down the aisle. My father cried too, sitting in the front row with his new girlfriend, a kind woman he had met at a grief support group. I stood beside my brother and handed him the rings when it was time, feeling the weight of the moment settle over all of us. This was what Christine had tried to destroy. Not just the relationship between siblings, but the possibility of this moment. The possibility of standing beside my brother on the most important day of his life, of being part of his joy, of watching him build a future with someone who truly loved him. She had failed. Despite everything, she had failed. Christine was not invited to the wedding. It had been a difficult decision for Ethan, months of agonizing over whether to include his mother in his special day. In the end, he had chosen peace over obligation. He could not have both Christine and the rest of us there without tension, without the ghost of her betrayal haunting every moment. He had chosen us, the family she had tried to take from him. At the reception, my father made a toast that brought everyone to tears. "To my son Ethan and his beautiful bride Alexis, may your marriage be built on honesty, on trust, on the kind of love that strengthens over time. And may you always remember that family is the people who choose you, who fight for you, who never give up on you no matter how hard the world tries to pull you apart." He looked at me across the room, and I saw everything in his eyes. The years of pain, the manipulation we had survived, the healing we had done together. "To family," he finished. "The real kind." "To family," we echoed. And as Ethan and Alexis took to the dance floor for their first dance, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The letters hidden in a drawer, the lies exposed in a hospital room, the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust. We had survived it, all of it. My stepmother had made my brother hate me. She had used his insecurities against him, had twisted his perception of reality, had nearly destroyed our relationship forever. But he had found one letter. And that letter had changed everything. The truth had set us free. And now, standing in the golden light of a summer evening, watching my brother dance with his wife, I knew that Christine's poison had finally, fully, been purged from our family. We were whole again. We were home,